Ooh boy. Ooh boy. Ooh girl. Ooh magical girl. That was not funny.
Fighting evil by moonlight, winning love by...
No, as good as that intro is, I can't afford too many copyright risks. So sorry for those who wanted to hear the music. Alright, let me just clear this up. I was gonna do Devil May Cry the animated series first, but I figured given the fact that I recently finished the Sakura card arc of Cardcaptor Sakura in the last review, and given the fact that I compare Cardcaptor Sakura to Sailor Moon and other magical girls constantly, I think it might be better to cover Sailor Moon first, given the fact that, yes, I watched the entire series, the Viz dub, because I watched the DSE/Cloverway dub, as I mentioned, in the sibling anime tradition segment of Trigun's review, and in Cardcaptor Sakura's videos, I talked about how I watched Sailor Moon with my sister. I also made a remark that I would watch the entire Viz dub. And I did. Who knows, I might have to do that, and maybe I'll review Sailor Moon in the future. Who knows? Like this video, share, subscribe, and comment down below begging me to review Sailor Moon if you want me to do that. But, like I said, I do like Sailor Moon. But this review is definitely going to show a lot of my critical side with the series. Now, I'll try and keep it positive, since, like I said, I'm not going to just say criticism about something I like. Even if I don't like it as much as I used to, or like it as much as everyone else, I do want to point out positives and negatives as a proper reviewer should. But anyways, greetings comrades and outlaw everyone. I'm Quinn866. Welcome to the 5th episode of the Anime Memories Retrospective. Now, if you saw my review of the CCS Sakura card arc, which I unfortunately had to make a cut video and link the entire version in the description because YouTube's copyright was being a little stingy that time, you may have noticed at the very end, memories of the forgotten clear card arc flooded to my unfortunate mind. No! 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 I'm not reviewing you! No! 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 Yeah. As much as I love Cardcaptor Sakura, that arc is the one thing that holds it down from being my favorite magical girl anime ever. I also realized I never gave the Sakura card arc a rating at the end, so, yeah, I apologize. I'll just do that right here. If you saw the CCS Sakura card arc 2 video, I gave that arc a 9.3 out of 10. It's amazing. Okie dokie. With that number rating aside, I did claim Cardcaptor Sakura was not my favorite magical girl anime. And no, Sailor Moon is not it either, not by a long shot. If I prefer Cardcaptor Sakura over Sailor Moon, I'd be completely contradicting myself. And you guys can probably see why neither of these are my favorite magical girl anime. I'm a 21-year-old male janitor working with some Navy books. I'm obviously not the target audience. I don't think the designer's like, yeah, let's make this show for 21-year-old janitors working at the Navy Academy. Yeah, that's never. I don't think any anime producer targeted towards that specific audience. But anyways, I mentioned this heavily during my Trigun intro, and you also may have noticed in the more recent episodes, my editor, Tim Text comments. Say hi, Tim. Insert some text here to let them know that I send these to you and you add in some snarky text. Thank you. Anyways, since I had previously said if I got a certain amount of views, subscribes, likes, comments, whatever on the CCS video, I would sober up and buy Sailor Moon's Viz dub. Coming out of it and seeing my video at just over 100 views, I'm satisfied. Now, it's not like thousands of views like the other big shot YouTubers, but it satisfied me enough, so I bought the entire freaking series on Amazon, from Sailor Moon 1 to 5, or Season 1 through Season 5. And I also ordered the Viz dub, because I watched the entire DIC/Cloverway dub as a kid. And after seeing the Viz dub, okay, just one big thing, the Viz dub is the way to go, no question. The DIC dub had its charm, but the Viz dub is just so much more cohesive. The Viz dub kept in all of the cut episodes and cut scenes, like certain characters with LGBTQ relations.
Know this in your heart, Kunzite. I will always love you.
And I will love you, Zoisite.
And some of the more violent bits.
Usagi, turns out you were right. About Yuichiro, I should have kissed him. Too late.
So that's an obvious plus, so it doesn't cut the story. The music for the first season was not remixed at all, and I prefer that. Now, I do like the original DIC intro theme. I mean, the English lyrics, I like it because I can understand them, and the music, the instrumentation, is really good. Like, I love that rock guitar. Like, you probably know what I'm talking about if you watched it still. Though, in all fairness, I do think the lyrics for the Viz Japanese intro fit more. Now, okay, to be fair, the music lines up the animation pretty well, but I think, that she is the one named Sailor Moon, like, yeah, no shit, but like when you translate the Japanese intro, there's stuff about, Miyako romance, counting the stars and constellations, like that feels like better from a lyrical standpoint. But I don't think you wanted to just hear me talk about dub changes. But I do want to cover this now, so we won't have to cover it in future videos. And even though the Japanese lyrics and, DSC, remixes are good, they're both good intros. And I mean, it's an iconic intro for good reason. It's good. It does what it's supposed to. I think it's catchy. It's well animated, and every season has a new animation to go along with the song, known as Moonlight Deserto. I can't pronounce it, but whatever. It's a good intro. It's iconic for the right reasons. Now, another thing that was changed actually was the voices. And, alright, I'm going to say right now, I found way more of the characters' voices to fit their personalities in the Viz dub, which is a plus, since in the DIC dub, there were a few voices that were kind of meh. Now, there were a few that were good, a few that were better in DIC, but Viz's voices are just so much better, people. Like Luna, for instance. In the DIC dub, she sounded like an old nanny. You are Sailor Moon! And, okay, it was good for the memes, given how Luna acted way more level-headed than Usagi and constantly bugging around. That might have been why they gave her the nanny voice. But as meme-worthy as it is, it's dated.
You are Sailor Moon and you must fight evil.
Though in the Viz dub, Luna actually sounds like a cat.
You don't actually believe a single word I'm saying, do you?
So credit there. Now yes, the nanny voice was good for the memes, but it just faded off as time passed on. So that's why I think the Viz dub of Luna is way better. Though, that's not to say I'm spitting on the previous voice actors, since they're good voices. I just think they're put in questionable places. Like, Luna's voice could have worked for maybe another character. Just not Luna, obviously, and this can be said for a lot of characters. For instance, Dr. Tomoe in Season 3. In the DSC dub, he actually sounds pretty cool for a villain. His voice is deep and menacing and gives off the proper vibes for a villain. It just doesn't fit the mad scientist gig he has going.
Really? Kaori Knight is dead, is she? You will now take over where Kaori Knight left off. I'm trusting you now, Eugeo.
Like, yeah, that's actually a pretty good voice. It's just not the right character. Like, I think that voice would have worked better for maybe, like, I don't know, Jadeite, or, another villain maybe earlier on, given the fact that the male villains, or really just the male characters in general, are so underplayed in this anime. But in the Viz dub, Dr. Tomoe sounds way more like an unstable scientist on the verge of cracking his experiment's greatest challenge, which he is.
It's me. Tell me, what happened to Kaolinite? I see. Well then, I'd like you to take her place. You're the only one I can count on, Udiel.
Yeah, like I said, the DIC Tomoe voice. Oh my goodness, my hair is terrible. No wonder I keep having to swipe it out of the way. God, okay, I'm gonna try and deal with it. I'm gonna try and deal with it because who knows? Maybe having bad hair on camera might be another recurring joke right now. But anyways, the point is, God, I can't take myself seriously with this hair. Okay, wow. Alright. I'm just gonna leave that there in case I need that again. Yeah, like I said, the deep and dominating, more controlling voice is a good villain voice. Just not for Tomoe. Dr. Tomoe is meant to be kind of an insane scientist on the verge of cracking his experiment's greatest challenge. And Tomoe, if he was the type to be controlling, that voice would work. The thing is, he's not. Tomoe is more insane, and he prefers to use his charisma and words to cleverly direct the witch's fight to his desired goals without resorting to intimidation or control. And this is why his Viz voice works better. And this especially applies in his goofy scenes, given the whole insanity bit, he's gotta have some goofy scenes.
Darn it! It's too hot! I've got an idea.
See, like, it just doesn't work, because for his intimidating moments, that voice fits great, but for the goofy moments, it's just like, come on, dude. And this is why the Viz voice not only makes it better, but it actually makes it funny!
Too hot! Damn it! That's enough for today. Wait, that's it.
Like, yeah, that works! And given the fact that the Viz voice actually cursed, saying damn it, just sells it for me. Like I said, personally speaking, I do have a soft spot for the DIC dub due to childhood nostalgia, though I highly recommend just watching the Viz dub for the full story and the more fitted voice actors, since the DIC/Cloverway dub took out episodes and scenes that were either important or just too kinky at the time, but now we can handle it.
When their energy level rises to its very highest point.
You're sure of yourself, aren't you?
Go away, Zoocyte. This is not your affair.
You think you can succeed where Jedi failed?
Back off.
And of course, there's also the name changes, but that's not really too big. Though, hot take, I prefer Serena over Usagi for Sailor Moon herself. Like, yeah, I know it's a hard case of localization, changing names, but let's be real here. She definitely acts like a Serena. However, I prefer everyone else's names in the Viz dub, so one simple main character's name isn't a big deal, though. Enough about voice dub changes, though, because you probably didn't click on this video for another overly long intro that went on for about 15 minutes this time. So, let's just get right into it now, because I've made another overly long intro to the point that it's become a tradition at this rate. Alright, I'm not going to be one of those harsh people and rag on the animation. People, there have been so much complaining about the animation, but you have to remember, as a product of its time, Sailor Moon is obviously not gonna look great by today's standards, but at the time, it's pretty good. I mean, it doesn't change it from having some really dated cliches like the whole missing nose gig that animes since then have made fun of left and right to the point that it's become its own meme and its own trend at this rate, the no-nose animation. But really, people, you gotta remember, this is old anime. I'm not gonna be one of those people that unfairly compares the animation of the Sailor Moon to something like a Hunter x Hunter 2011. That's unfair, and keep this in mind, because I'm gonna be comparing a lot of stuff Sailor Moon has to other things of its time. I don't think it's very fair to compare tons and tons of things to Sailor Moon with stuff. Now, there'll be a few exceptions here and there, but I gotta judge Sailor Moon fairly, and judging it by today's standards definitely isn't fair. And the animation at the time looks good. There are, again, there's a lot of, cliche stuff like the transformation sequence that's over-sexualized, used for every single scene, and the attacks all being the same throughout every season and whatnot, but it doesn't change the fact that there is some charm in it, and for the time, again, there I go using that phrase, for the time, it's good enough. I don't really need to go into too much detail though, so next section.
It just looks like an ordinary bus. You're right.
Okay, so far I've been pretty critical, but here's where things are going to start improving. The world is great. Now, I think Fall Gaia from WATV is still the best world reviewed thus far. I mean, okay, as much of a mixed bag WATV is, the world of Fall Gaia was great, and Gunsmoke was good too, not as good as Fall Gaia, but still, and Tomoeda was a really big letdown. But Juban does so many things that Tomoeda should have done. Juban is essentially Tomoeda done right. Like, in CCS, a Japanese town isn't the most interesting thing, but it didn't work in CCS because CCS had good ideas with the magic and all, but none of the locations felt magical. Like, even when magic was going on in places like the school or at the Tokyo Tower, it didn't feel magical because it's just the school in Tokyo Tower. And even if the magical power, enhanced stuff, it didn't make the scenery or the atmosphere all that more magical. Now, Sailor Moon gets this right with Juban not only having locations that feel magical, but locations that are magical. And that's just so much better. And even the slice of life locations are way more varied, since so much of CCS took place at the school. And yes, there are a lot of school scenes in Sailor Moon, but the school isn't the only focus, since Cardcaptor Sakura reused a lot of its scenes for the slice of life parts, and especially for the magical parts. Like, there was so many locations reused for the card capturing, but here, the locations do vary out, at least more so than CCS. And like I said, we have actually magical locations. Like, take the villain's lair in the very first season, which we're covering right now. It looks good. It's droning, dark, has this really eerie vibe to it. The music fits, and the villains all monologuing just fits. It makes it feel magical, as a magical girl anime should. Then there are other magical bits like when the buses enter the portal to another dimension, that feels magical. The computer room, despite being computer room, feels dark and foreboding as the villains all track down the scouts. And heck, even locations that aren't supposed to be magical, like the boat docks, feel magical with characters using magic in it. And even the later seasons get this right with stuff like the Makai tree in season 2 or the Deathbusters lab in season 3. This stuff feels good. This stuff feels magical. Not all of it is magical, but it has the feeling of it, and Tomoeda wishes it had this kind of diversity. I mean, I don't mean to rag on Tomoeda, it's not the worst or whatever, but it's such a letdown for what Tomoeda been, and Juban is just so much better with actual magical places. Heck, even the sewers, the freaking sewers, feel more adventurous and magical than tons of Cardcaptor Sakura's locations. I mean, it's saying something if your sewers are better than an anime that came out years afterwards. Like, never in my life would I want to admit the sewers look better than something, animated or not. I mean, like, CCS, come on. It says something if Sailor Moon's sewers are better than your Penguin Park. Which you reuse not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, but 7 freaking times makes Penguin Park a really boring location. And that's not including the times it's normally used or in the movies or the clear card arc. So yes, with that said out of the way, Juban is essentially a better Tomoeda. And that's something Sailor Moon got right. And one of the few things Sailor Moon got over CCS. The world actually feels magical. And they don't reuse a penguin park 7 times!
Enough! I've had it with all of you! I'm sending you to the multi-dimensional chaos world!
What's the multi-dimensional chaos world?
It might be prehistoric Africa during the age of the dinosaurs. Or it might be medieval Europe during an era of war, bloodshed, and bubonic plague.
Whoa! Those totally suck! I don't want to go to either of those worlds! Alpha!
Alrighty then, now for the audio. I realized I put the music / sound as well as the voice acting in different segments, so I decided to streamline this review format since I'm still trying to get my review format out of the way. I know I don't want to make things as long as WATV's 5-hour-long edition, nor do I want to make things as short as I did the Trigun review. I kind of wanted to do it like my WATV abridged version, ironically, which I feel like is the most watchable in terms of content and quality, though WATV left out the sound, animation, and whatnot, so I'm obviously still trying to perfect my formula, so I'm mashing together the sound, the music, and the voice acting into just the audio segment. And I do not need to cover the dub, since I already did that to hell and back in the intro, which should just become its own segment at this rate. I might even just label it the overly long intro for the sake of the recurring joke, but regardless, we're here to talk about the audio. The music is very catchy. I mean, the opening theme, as I said before, both versions are good for different reasons. The other tracks, like the Everyday School Life, those tracks fit well. They got the kind of goofy, but also kind of, giddy feeling to them. There's also the more emotional tracks that, might make you laugh, might make you angry, might make you shed a few tears. It does what it's supposed to do. And the villain themes, they have that evil, kind of dun-dun, feel to them. They also kind of got this, like, jazzy feel to it, which kind of fits given the moon and the night feel of Sailor Moon. So the villains being the dun-dun-dun-dun, like the jazz theme, it actually kind of works, despite the fact that you wouldn't think a villain theme would be jazzy, but it works, and I kind of dig it. So yeah, like I said, I was going to get more positive from now on, since the music of Sailor Moon is really iconic. And I'm not just talking about the opening theme. I mean, the background music is really good. It's got its own identity. Like, there's much more, animes, that, like, do, like, these, like, tracks try to sound more badass or goofy, but Sailor Moon has its own identity. Like, I could listen to many of these tracks, and I could pinpoint it from Sailor Moon. And that's a pretty good thing. Like, you don't really have a lot of music. This anime music is just usually so good as is, but it's hard to make your anime music feel unique without it just being, in quotation marks, good. I've said it before that there are very few animes, I would say, that have a bad soundtrack that I personally listen to. Now, there's obviously, like, music tracks I'm not fond of or thumbs I don't like, but as a collective, there's only, like, 3 or 4 animes I watch I'd say had a bad soundtrack, and Sailor Moon has a really good soundtrack with an identity of its own, and that works really well. And like I said, I don't feel a need to cover the voice acting, and the sound effects are all old-timey, but that again adds charm to it, so now it's finally time for the characters. And I'll try and keep this brief.
How barbaric. You prehistoric witch! You scarred my precious face!
Margo! What? Oh no, a fight! Huh?
Alrighty then. I'm gonna try and keep this brief, for the heroes at least, because I do have a lot I want to say about the villains, given the fact that most people should know the basic archetypes of magical girl animes. Even those who haven't watched it should have at least an idea, or at least a vague synopsis of it, so I'll give that for those who don't. Sailor Moon is known for its simple yet relatable characters, and I can agree on this account. I mean, Sailor Moon alongside Dragon Ball was like, again, the earliest anime America kinda got, so I'm not gonna rag on character complexion for a first season of a newly introduced thing to America at the time, so it's gotta be simple, and I gotta give credit. I agree with the characters being simple, so it could introduce America in a comfortable way. Though there are some questionable bits here and there, I will admit that the characters being simple was a smart choice, since it worked in the long run, since it made anime continue to be in America, and even if there was stuff censored, we got the VizDub to expand upon that and give us the cut bits, so, alright. Starting with our main girl, Usagi, aka Sailor Moon herself. Now, I did compare Usagi a lot to Sakura in CCS when I said, she was a wimp. And I said Sakura was a lot braver than her. And I want to say right now, I gave Usagi a very negative impression, but that is not at all what I meant back then. I mean, I have absolutely no desire to hate on Usagi, since really, she's actually a really good character. I mean, okay, she's simple. Yeah, she's really simple, but you don't need to be that complex. Sakura is a lot more complex, but that's because, again, she came out later when anime in America had a few more things to go off of. And sure, Sailor Moon is a wimp and a klutz. I mean, the intro of almost every episode does this whole, I'm Usagi, insert blank year of high school student rank here, and I'm a bit of a clumsy, but I'm secretly the pretty guardian symbol. Like, they do this intro at the start of every series, and it fits considering she is a klutz, she is a high school student, and she is secretly the pretty guardian symbol. And I've heard plenty of people argue she isn't the best fit for the pro tag, and on a few counts, I can see why, there leads to some cringe moments, but I want to say right now, Anime America made a point that I literally agree with about Usagi and Sailor Moon, and let me put that clip right here.
For starters, let's talk about the main character. There are a lot of arguments with Usagi being the main hero. I mean, the others can prove they can fight better than her, and can handle some situations more mature than her. Still, isn't this a little different approach to the typical hero? I think Usagi was made to resemble most of us as regular students just trying to get by in school while trying to enjoy life. How else would you react if all of a sudden you were given superpowers and you were obligated to fight? Sure, it'd be cool to have powers, but why all of a sudden should I have to fight these monsters? You have the power! You have to fight them! You are Sailor Moon! Yeah, I'd be pissed off too. This is why I defend her as a character. She may get whiny and annoying, but she seems more realistic compared to some superheroes.
Yeah, like, Robin from Anime America is absolutely right. She said it best, and I agree with her. Usagi didn't ask for this. Like, as cool as having superpowers would be, the fact you didn't want them, let alone have to carry the responsibility of having them, it gives Usagi this really relatable thing, because she's really thrown together this ragtag team, and she's the most ragtaggedy of them all, and not only was she given to this with almost no warning, but she was given no choice, no way to escape the fact that she had to carry this weight on her shoulders, and I absolutely agree. I mean, honestly, watch Anime America's Sailor March Madness playlist, as I really agree with a lot of the points they made. Though, I am going to say, I am a little bit shocked they put Sailor Moon S so low, at least Robin did on her ranking, but I mean, hey, we're all entitled to our own opinions, so yeah, special shout out to Anime America. Great stuff, by the way. And yes, she is a wimp and a softie, but has a big heart and good intentions. Even if she still can't get to school in time by the last arc, she's more made to represent what an unlikely hero's reaction would be, and that does work. Now, don't get me wrong, she's still a crybaby and can be annoying. I mean, she even uses her cry in one scene as an actual combat strategy. Ow! Oh my goodness! Took my ears, life! That hurt even for me! Ugh, jeez. Okay, one sec. Okay, now that I've taken the proper safety measures, let's try this again. I don't think that helped at all. Okay, now it's time for the male lead, Tuxedo Mask. And right off the bat, I want to give compliments for male representation in an anime usually centered around females. And this is something I often complain about in magical girl animes. I get it, it's a magical girl anime, so there's not going to be tons of magical dudes. I get that, but even outside of that, the male cast is so underplayed and so short. And this goes for both the villain male characters, the characters that are male that are just ordinary citizens, and even, male characters that get source snippets. I just feel like the male characters in these animes back then, and even to this day, are so underplayed. I get it. It's a magical anime, but you have to remember, these are usually targeted towards children, and children like to, watch stuff with their family or siblings. So maybe having a father or brother watch a magical anime with his daughter will be hard, since he'll find it harder to latch on to someone that shares personality traits but is a young girl, so the father or brother would have a harder time latching onto. Now again, you can still latch onto something like that but it doesn't change the fact that it's obviously targeted for girls. And I'd say the same thing for a girl in a family being forced to watch a male thing on Family Guy. Like, if my sister watched Transformers, she'd probably get bored because a lot of the Transformers are male, despite being robots and all that jazz. And I do like it that Tuxedo Mask introduces this, and he's also the Sailor Senshi of Earth. But of course, he doesn't call himself Sailor Earth, which is nice. I also like it that he does not cross-dress. Big plus. But despite that, I have quite a few complaints about the dude. Again, being the only male Sailor Senshi is not that big of a problem. I get it's a magical girl anime. But the fact is, his powers are practically non-existent. Again, I like it that it doesn't do the whole "I am Sailor Earth in the name of the Earth," monologue that everyone else does. Nor does he have an over-sexualized transformation sequence, but it's just so underplayed. I mean, he is the reincarnation of Prince Endymion of Earth, and he's now born as Tuxedo Mask. Again, for Mamoru, this is fine. Same thing with Usagi being Queen Serenity, reborn as Sailor Moon. And they're obviously fated to love each other. That's fine. And for the first season, I get it, this is really cliche considering we know Sailor Moon is Usagi. We know Mamoru's Tuxedo Mask, despite the villains and tons of other characters not knowing it. Now, for Sailor Moon Usagi, this doesn't work, because Sailor Moon has, the yellow hair, the pigtails, acts the same way, that makes sense. But even though we know it's Tuxedo Mask, I will say, to the anime's credit, there are tons of people with short black hair. Tuxedo Mask, has, the masquerade mask, which historically has been used to disguise yourself. Now, I don't know why people are so stupid to buy the masquerade gig, but I'll understand why people would not think Mamoru's Tuxedo Mask, in fact, that there's tons of people with short black hair. He acts pretty different in Tuxedo Mask mode, so I'll buy it. Again, we as the audience know it, but it's more believable, regardless of that. And I get it, they wanted to make the relationship rickety and attempt to make it a surprise, but it just doesn't work. I mean, we know it's Tuxedo Mask. We know Mamoru's Tuxedo Mask. We know Sailor Moon is Usagi. And we're probably either screaming out loud or in our heads, we know it's you. Just reveal it to the villains, get to the interesting stuff. And again, this is old anime, so I can forgive this for a few times, but it drags on way longer than it should. And even though Tuxedo Mask is a Sailor, she doesn't really have magic, and he's not very useful in combat in the slightest, which is such a shame for him being Usagi's romantic interest. I mean, 95% of the time, he throws a rose.
Who are you?
I am known as Tuxedo Mask.
Whooshes his cape. Does a speech about justice or something.
You'll pay for the crimes of using innocent people to carry out your evil deeds.
Maybe swipes with his cane staff a few times. And that is it.
Farewell. Until we meet again.
Yeah, not too great of a male lead, guys. I mean, I get it. And the stupid thing is that this would be okay for the first season. The problem is, it's not. It carries over to all the other seasons. Why the other Sailor Scouts got upgrades and more abilities and Tuxedo Mask didn't is beyond me. Even though Tuxedo Mask does have a really interesting role later on in this season, which I was like, yeah, I like that. But at the same time, you have to remember about 95% of the season was...
Tuxedo Mask! Sweet!
Well, that. Not as good as some of those later moments can be, it doesn't change the fact that Tuxedo Mask as a character is pretty underplayed, which is stupid and pretty disappointing for a male lead and the main romantic interest of our protag.
There you are! You fell for it! Oh no! Sailor Moon, now's your chance!
Alright, now it's time for Ami, aka Sailor Mercury, the smart one of the Sailor Scouts. She's your typical bookworm and study hard, work wise, order and organized person. And she is really big in Japan, encapsulating a lot of what a hard-trying student can be like, though in America she wasn't as well received due to the differences in our country's treating school. At least that's what I've heard online. Now, I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it does have a ring of truth to it, even if it might not be 100% true, because I don't know what Japanese schools are like, so I don't want to make any claims. I'm just gonna say what Wiki says, but yeah. She still has a good audience in America, regardless of that fact, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really as big on her as other people. Like, I put her above a few of the other Sailor Scouts, but there's a really big reason why I don't put her that high on my Sailor Scout ranking list, which I have made text documents of, but I probably won't make a top 10 because that'll just cringe. But and no, it's not because I'm jealous of her being smarter than me, especially at that age. It's actually quite a different reason. And even then, I'm not really going to compare myself to someone else, especially if they're 14 years old, female, from Japan, and nowhere even close to me in personality. But the reason why I don't really like Ami/Sailor Mercury as much as, given how ragtag of a group the Sailor Scouts/Sailor Senshi are, being Japanese schoolgirls and all, her being the smart one feels more like a plot device than a proper character trait. Now, okay, sure, she does act that way as a person. I'm saying, though, in the world and writing, her personality was made that way to balance out the more erratic Sailor Scouts bickering, and I do like her water element. Wow, Waller element? Oh, yeah, Waller element. Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. I do like it that she's the water element, and she has kind of like that role as well of being the smart one. She also is the more defensive of the Sailor Scouts, with her abilities being more more defensive, more status based, which is actually nice considering that the other Sailor Scouts/Senshi have pretty straightforward abilities. And if you're wondering why I say Sailor Scouts/Sailor Senshi, that's because depending on which version you're watching, they're called that, but it's the same thing. Sailor Scouts, Sailor Senshi. So I'll just say whichever. I just want to clear that up. I also do find Mercury's devotion to schoolwork endearing, but at the same time, it's also kind of stupid. Like, she's so buried in books to the point she has a hard time doing anything outside for fun. Now, mainly it's because she enjoys studying. And, this works for her character in school. But in summer and winter times, what are you going to do? Hit the books then? I mean, you can't seriously tell me you just study on season breaks just because you have free time. Why not use that to explore other things or put what you're studying to good use? I mean, okay, given how smart and confident you are in your knowledge, the fact that you use none of your studies except for your doctor profession just feels like kind of like a really weird plot hole. And yes, okay, I do find her character arc to be, okay, but it's just so contradictory with a mess of confusing plot holes. For how smart she really is in school, she's kind of stupid in passion. Now, if they portrayed it as that being her struggle finding her passions, which they do, it would work. The problem is, it takes so long to get to that point. And even then, we don't really know much about Mercury's passions, save for a few select episodes. And I like Mercury. She does greatly help ease the annoying banter. But it takes more than that to be a truly smart character, or for you to be a truly good smart character, rather than being smart for the sake of the plot. But now I'd like to move on to Ray, aka Sailor Mars.
Aww. Wait a minute! Don't tell me you're falling for Tuxedo Mask!
What? Don't be ridiculous. I only wanted to thank him for helping us save the passengers. And besides, you're the one who has feelings for him, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Wake up, honey. Sometimes those feelings are only one-sided.
What's one-sided mean?
Okay, now on to Ray, aka Sailor Mars. I love her! For the longest time, she actually was in my top 3 Senshi/Scouts list, though she did get bumped down a few ranks upon rewatching the Viz dub to remember some of her more questionable moments, and after, okay, not gonna lie, seeing her manga and Crystal version. Yeah, I don't really like how they made her more laid back in spiritual in those versions. Like, yeah, she's a shrine maiden, but that doesn't really fit the raging fire element, if you ask me. Plus, her being the angry one not only gives more fun moments, but it makes her stand out. I think Mars would be kind of a cardboard cutout if she was more calm and laid back like the manga and the crystal version portray her. And I think giving her a fiery passion and temper just make her more memorable. And yes, I understand she's a shrine maiden, so they probably wrote her that way to be more calmer in the manga/crystal variant of the anime. But come on, people, this angriness not only makes her character arc a lot more complete with it being an obvious flaw, but tell me it's at least a little bit more interesting to have a shrine maiden that gets angry. I don't think I've ever seen any other shrine maiden in anime get angry. I mean, Kaho Miyazuki didn't get angry in Card Captor Sakura, so having Rei have this anger with both a temper and passion works. I mean, given the fire element and all, and her more hot-headedness can get to the group, and sometimes me, but I think her bickering with Usagi probably is the most genuine bickering or source of it in the Sailor Scouts. And what I also like about Rei is, damn, her roasts. I mean, some of her roasts are actually pretty good to Usagi, not gonna lie. But then again, I'm just preaching to the choir here. I mean, she's the fire element. I mean, you're not really much of a fire element user if you can't roast things. Am I right? Ha! Unintentional roasts in the scripting. God, I love sometimes reading my scripts word for word. Then other times not reading it all and messing up. Pardon the double roast back-to-back cliche. Anyways, I don't know if it's just being a sucker for the fire elements, but I really just love Sailor Mars/Rei. Plus, those red heels are hot! Bad joke, I know, but I couldn't resist. Alright. Now that Sailor Mars is out of the way, let's talk about Sailor Jupiter. Okay, that time that was intentional. Now for Makoto, or Sailor Jupiter. Now, she's kind of a hard one for me to describe, believe it or not. I like her, but the funny thing is, I really don't know why. Maybe it's because, lightning element and she has a bit of the grass element, and I'm a snucker for that too. I'm just going to start saying snucker from now on just because I'm going to add that to my dictionary, but yeah, it's like, she's your typical, tough girl with a strong heart. I mean, she judo flipped a bully for throwing taunts, but...
Why, you!
She's also a softie. And, she likes cooking, making her own lunches, which Usagi gets all giddy over, and as the lightning element, with I said a bit of nature plants really laid on, I enjoy in that regard, and plus there's this recurring plot element of Makoto having plenty of boyfriends dump her, yet whenever she sees a new potential mate, she always has these, glittery stars in her eyes. She's like, he reminds me of the one who dumped me. Maybe he could be my new one. And this is both played for laughs by other characters, and it does have a bit of a dark, undertone to it. Now, I don't know if that's saying Sailor Jupiter's sadomasochistic, but...
He's just like him.
What are you talking about?
My first love.
Hey! Hello? Earth Tamako! Wake up! Come back!
That's not what I'm going for. What I mean is, it kind of hints at Makoto/Sailor Jupiter not being able to let go of her, previous lovers. Again, people might interpret that as sadomasochism, but I'm not gonna go there. And I like her more than Sailor Moon, Mercury, and Tuxedo Mask especially. Sailor Mars still wins out, though, because it's frickin' Sailor Mars. Finally, we have Minako, aka Sailor Venus. Y'all should probably know the history about codename Sailor V being the prototype or beta of Sailor Moon. Venus, aka Minako, shares plenty of Usagi's traits, being doofy, kinda airheaded, late for class, snacking, and being more on the funsies side of things. Her whole gig usually revolves around stardom, being famous, being an idol, what have you, and this is certainly more compelling than Usagi's desire to find true love, I also find it a lot more compelling than Ami wanting to be a doctor, and pretty much all the other characters' motivations. And the main reason for that is because, well, I wanted to be an actor myself, but we should know how difficult acting as a career especially is to get into. Like, Hollywood really emphasizes looks over actual talent, and that says a lot about the industry. And I'm obviously going way off topic though, but you're probably wondering what element is Sailor Venus, and this is a bit tricky. I can't read the script. It's a bit tricky considering her tech is called Crescent Beam. Now you might think electricity, but no, Jupiter's already got that, and she goes under this whole Goddess of Love subtitle. But what I hear is that she is the meadow element. Now, later on, I believe that, given her attack, the Crescent Chain and a few other things, but I'm not sure if this is what they had in mind when first. Again, I think she is the meta element for Love and Beauty Shot in the last season, as well as, you know, the Love Me chain, but Crescent Beam is hard to piece together with metal. But again, she is the metal element, so I'll take it. But the only real issue is, and I like Venus, the only problem is, for the last Sailor Scout introduced, she gets way too little screen time, and that's kind of sad. And, you know, I won't go into too much detail about Luna, since really, she's just there to be the mascot. And, you know, her nanny voice is meme-worthy, but the Viz voice just wins out for actually sounding like a cat. Or, I mean, okay, maybe an old cat might sound like a nanny, but I think the young cat voice just fits more, given how much more energetic and, honestly, level-headed Luna is. Now, let's be real here, she's there just to be a mascot, and is nowhere near as cleverly written as Kiro-chan in CCS, and, you know, she is more there to be an advisor, give the new scouts their powers identities, and act as another voice of reason apart from Ami and Jupiter, but really, it's just not enough to save a generic mascot. And we do have another kitty named Artemis, who is essentially Luna, but he was with Minako Sailor Venus, and I do like his voice a lot more in Viz as well. In fact, his DIC voice was kinda...
Looking sharp there, kitty cat.
You haven't changed.
That's not how I remembered his voice. Ugh. For some reason I remember it better, but... maybe my memory's just wrong. Although, something both kitty cats get, that I'll admit is good, they do get a few focus episodes. Now, Luna's was better in all honesty, and I've heard people argue the Artemis Animal Adventure focus episodes is one of the worst in the series, but I heavily disagree. I mean, it's obviously not as good as Luma's. Luma's actually had story significance, but I don't really think Artemis's Animal Adventure is that bad. I mean, sure, it's pretty slow and really just another fill episode, but it's entertaining enough and doesn't suffer from plot holes or inconsistent writing. It's forgettable, but half of the episodes are filler, so is that really a complaint that can be exclusively pinned on Artemis's Animal Adventure? Okay, I'm sorry. Now it's time for a significant change of tone, since I know I've sounded not as invested or energetic as previous videos when running through the characters. The villains are a saving grace, though, and actually, I look forward to seeing villains in genres for younger children, or even just, you know, a different audience that might not necessarily be children. I mean, it's really hard to write good or unique villains that don't blend in too much with other generalizations, and given the limitations of the audience this is for, they had to do a lot of stuff to make their villains interesting. Now, the DIC dub, again, censored a lot of things that made it stood out, but they're still entertaining. And this is why the Dark Kingdom, our very first faction of antagonists... Oh wait, I should probably talk about those. Much like in WATV, our antagonists are more or less a group, rather than having one big leader. I mean, yeah, they have a queen and all that jazz, but they get enough snarky moments to be leaders in their own unique way. Despite Queen Beryl obviously standing her ground, I always like how every arc got a new faction of villains, and in a few cases, there were seasons with 2 arcs in them. so we got 2 different factions for a couple of seasons, which was nice. And personally, I divide every faction into ranks. There's the monsters / minions of the week, there's the elite / commanders, and the great evils / big bads. The monsters / minions of the week are just that, and usually dealt with in the same episode or fairly quickly. The elite's commanders are usually the senders of the minions, who act as their advisors, then eventually fight the good guys when seeing their monsters dunno, and the great evil / big bads are the ones that are the most influential or leading figures, and there can be more than one of these in some arcs, by the way. Now, in this arc, the minions are the Yoma demons. They're about as basic and as cliche as you'd expect. I mean, the elites send them in for over-the-top plans, they get their asses kicked, get killed, or purified, thus infuriating their commanders. The fight scenes with most minions are very formulaic, involving Sailor Moon herself and the other Senshi Scouts getting trapped before either 1, Tuxedo Mask gives them an opportunity, 2, another Sailor Guardian tries something new, or 3, they get dispatched by their own commanders. Usually the first, despite how they obviously fill the time needed for the Scouts to inevitably find their commander, they don't really have that interesting ideas, and that's really sad too. I understand this is early anime and Sailor Moon wasn't always intended to have giant action scenes. I mean, it's supposed to be a romance with cosmic warriors with action, more or less being a side of it. Though of course the magic is more used in the fight scenes, but they obviously can't make the fight scenes too bloody or violent or whatever. The problem is not that it's not violent or have high stakes, a few of them do. The problem is there's no real variety. I mean, there is, a few things, but it's so minimal to the point of embarrassment. Sailor Scout does something, doesn't work, gets trapped, whatever, transformation scene, Tuxedo Mask, kitties, or other Sailor Scout does something different, they do finishing move that is usually done by Sailor Moon, bada bing, bada boom. It's just not that interesting because, yes, as tense as some fight scenes can get, you know what's probably going to happen for the most part, and it makes the twist not that interesting, since we know who's gonna win. It's like they didn't even have any interesting strategies from the heroes and villains, I mean. Okay, I understand Cardcaptor Sakura's action scenes were not all fights per se, but they were way more energetic and creative. Like, where is using the environment in unique ways when you don't have the proper abilities? Where is the abilities being used in unique ways, since all the Sailor Scout upgrades aren't used individually, they're just using the newest ones for the most part? Whereas the other types of action scenes, like stealth segments, or races, chases, these are kind of things that make action scenes good. As much as I like fighting, it just doesn't come off as good. Even with the unique themes of enemies and whatnot, it's just not as good as Cardcaptor Sakura's action. Most importantly, where are the good motion shots? Cardcaptor Sakura had these left and right, these amazing motion shots, especially in the final fights. And where's the surprise? There really isn't any, and that's not to say Cardcaptor Sakura and Sailor Moon should be compared this way, and there are times with good motion shots in Sailor Moon, like during the fight with Jadeite, for instance. There was a pretty good motion shot there, as jagged as it might look.
You're through!
See, that was a good motion shot, and one of Tuxedo Mask's better encounters. That's also another thing why I think Tuxedo Mask needed. He needed more challenge, since if the Sailor Scouts don't get it, you might as well give it to Tuxedo Mask. But no. And that's another big thing. The fights aren't really even a challenge, and even times where it might look like it, we as the viewers know it's no problem for the Sailor Scouts, and they're gonna get out of it, and that's such a letdown. They don't even gang up on the Sailor Guardians. Most of the time it's one-on-one, maybe a few duos, and rarely there's 3 Yoma demons. Like, there was one time the 3 plant Yomas from Zoicide Attack, but that was just so rare, and other few instances occurred in the series, and another problem is, why don't they have the Yomas gang up on them, like have an army of them, or one to counter each Sailor Guardian? I mean, that worked for the final battle, so what's going on here? But the Yoma demons, in all fairness, they do look pretty intimidating at times. So visually, they get the job done. And again, this is, the first arc, so I'll be understanding of the simple action scenes, but I will criticize future action scenes if they retain this really formulaic thing. Since yes, there are formulaic, but they can at least have interesting strategies employed, and they didn't really have that here. Now, the elites / commanders, though, are a huge step up. In Sailor Moon, most of the arc's elites are my favorite villains, like in general. Mainly for being more challenging than basic minions, having the most male representation, unique personalities, and, in my opinion, the best physical designs overall for every arc. The elites of the Dark Kingdom are the 4 Kingsmen of Heaven, which is actually a pretty good title, by the way. Starting with the first of the 4 Kingsmen of Heaven, Jadeite, the blonde-haired, subservient, and obedient commander of Queen Beryl. We'll cover her later. Jadeite is no doubt the weakest of the 4 Kingsmen in power, and in concept. Though, this is run-of-the-mill, though. I mean, I'm not expecting an extremely powerful first villain, and I understand he'll have flaws. Considering this is the first arc and early enemy, and even if he is very flawed compared to other villains, he still has some entertainment value. He has enough hate ability to make you growl in frustration when he gets away, and his over-the-top cliche plans feel unique in their own weird, charming way. His voice actor did a pretty good job, but my main issue is his last few moments. And okay, not gonna lie, I actually love the final fight with Jadeite. I mean, it lets you let out all that pent-up frustration, and Jadeite even tries a new tactic this time. Instead of using Yoma demons to back him up, he uses the planes at the airport to try and run over the scouts, and that's kind of dark if you think about it a lot. I mean, the other villains died by magic, or by falling into a pit, being purified, being, killed off by the own villain or whatever. It's usually like something magical, something more subtle. Like, falling in a pit isn't as, deadly as, getting run over. Again, they don't show it, but it is dark if you think about it. And yeah, like I said, it's a creative little plan to use a bit of a darker method. Again, not too dark, but conceptually it is. Tuxedo Mask shows up to try and save the gang, but as usual, he only gets so far, and the two end up falling into the water, with only Jada emerging, laughing his ass off, thinking he has won. And up until this point, it's been standard fare, save for the fact that he's an elite, and using the planes is the darker method of evil. However, here is where I start to have a few red flags. Alright. As Jada is boasting and bragging about being able to kill Tuxedo Mask, he expects the scouts to cry and drop to their knees in horror as their male idol is gone. And like all women, they should see how weak they are without their man. And yes, he said this. You heard me correctly. He discriminated women. Now, personally, I'm not offended by this, since I'm not a woman, nor do I think any females watching this should flip out over it, since there are way worse in other shows, and it's clearly just for drama to make Jadeite's, villainous actions more evil, make him hateable, which would make his defeat all the more satisfying. But at the same time, though, it is a good way to make him hateable, but it's also a bit stupid. Now, his defeat is satisfying, but also stupid because he discriminated them. Now, I argue that it is a good way to make him hateable, but come on, I'm not a fan of resorting to this for adding the whole kiddie cartoon boys versus girls gender war episode where the dudes and girls act mean with one another, and at the end of almost every portrayal, the girls prove themselves, even though they were probably acting like bitches at first. And this happened in Phineas and Ferb, the Rainbow Fish, Johnny Test, Alvin and the Chipmunks, etc., etc., etc. I've always hated this cliche. No, it's not because I wanted the dudes to win. Though there are a few examples where the dudes should have won, or at least pointed out the girls are being a bitch. For example, Ed and Eddie. There should have been so many times where the Kanker sisters or Sarah got theirs, but they didn't. Regardless, it's not because I want to pick a side. I don't like picking sides. And, in fact, I'm not that stupid, let alone immoral, that I'd say I want the dudes to win. Much like Kazuma, I am a believer in true gender equality.
I believe everyone's equal, ladies and dudes. So I don't have a problem throwing down on a couple of girls if they're asking for it. Right now, you're asking for it.
And I hate discrimination of any kind. Not just the big ones like racism, sexism, feminism, etc., whatever. I just mean discriminating anywhere. Discriminating someone because of disabilities, bad. Discriminating for not being vegan, bad. Discriminating just because you have a different opinion on a movie, character, political figure, video game, or franchise, bad. I'll say it again. Any discrimination is equally bad in my eyes. Discrimination is discrimination. No matter who does it or why it's done, discrimination is discrimination. End of story. I'd be making a mockery of myself if I was trying to say with Jadeite here. I mean, if I was siding with Jadeite, I don't know why I called him that, but whatever, I'd be an absolute moron. He did discriminate. He didn't even hide it. He flat out boasted it. Of course I'm not going to side with this loony. But if the developers really feel like they want to make it dramatic, why resort to this lame, we girls are just as you, good as men, blah, blah, like, why make that the climax? It's just such a lame way to do the women are just as strong as men. It's just like, it's like, the scripting is so outdated, and it's just like, stupid. Like, why not have the scouts use the time he spends rambling about this to just attack him as he's so invested in his speech? Or better yet, just remove the discrimination speech entirely. It makes him hateable, yes, but for the wrong reasons. This scene getting talked down to is so cliche. It's hard for me to take seriously, even if Usagi is right. His views on women are hard. He lost the fight because of it. And it's like, though, in all credit though, it was pretty satisfying that the Sailor Scouts managed to turn his plane's magic so it runs over him. Now, obviously, he didn't die bad. The Sailor Scouts aren't that sadistic. But as he teleports back, he's pretty banged up. And I think you can imagine how Queen Beryl feels after that women discriminating speech.
You're a disgrace. Now sleep for all eternity.
No, please, Queen Beryl!
Yeah. You probably didn't think about that too much, now did you, James? Okay, I talked way more than I should have about Jadeite's discriminating speech, but yeah, I don't think you watched this expecting me to go on a tangent about discrimination, so let's move on to the next villain, Nephrite, who is substantially better. He's my favorite of the four Kingsmen, after all. His voice actor did an excellent job selling...
Back off.
Correction, the Viz voice actor did a good job of selling Nephrite's more self-ambitious goals compared to Jadeite, who was a lot more about impressing Queen Beryl.
What's wrong, Nephrite?
Seems I have other matters to attend to. I can attack you anytime I want, now that I know your true identity, Sailor Moon. So watch your back.
Nephrite's more low-tone and deep voice, mixed in with his unwillingness to let the other Kingsmen get involved, makes it a good fit. And Nephrite, unlike Jadeite, also improves upon Jadeite's cliche plans. In a smart turn of events, Nephrite, instead of doing what Jadeite did, attacking as many people in a crowd as he could, Nephrite decides to go after one person who would have more potent energy. Now that's smart, since it's less risky and less noticeable. And like I said, the way he does this, because you're probably thinking, okay, is his way of failing just, he doesn't get the right person by energy? No. He actually has a way of finding out who will have the most energy and at what time, thanks to the cosmic orbs.
The stars see all, the stars know all. Celestial orbs, grant me your mystical powers. The noble archer Chiron is about to fire his arrow into the center of the Milky Way. And Sagittarius's target is Rui Sayonji. Your energy is mine.
And here's the thing about Nephrite. You see, in a few of Jadeite's schemes, Jadeite disguised himself in really bad disguises, like being a workout instructor, or how in one episode he went under a radio show under the name Jadeito. Like, come on, that is not subtle at all. But Nephrite had a single alias, Mr. Sanjuin, and unlike Jadeite, whose disguises were a part of his plans, Nephrite's disguises have a huge story impact, because his alias, Mr. Sanjuin, heavily plays into the character arc of Usagi's best friend at school, Naru. And I didn't think too much about Naru since I knew she got with Umino later on, because my DIC// Cloverway dub kind of spoiled that for me, even with my memory gaps here and there. But Naru kind of gets a thing from Mr. Sanjuin when he helps out a few people on a few of his schemes, like when he taught a tennis girl how to swing a tennis racket better, or helping a girl who made these Chinese dolls, for instance. And she really liked Mr. Sanjuin, not knowing he was Nephrite. And eventually, Nephrite thinks he can use Naru by mimicking Tuxedo Mask, not realizing Nephrite is Mr. Sanjuin. Eventually, Nephrite back at his mansion uses the star circle and sees Naru as his target, but he hesitates given Naru's concern for Mr. Sanjuin, his alias. Nephrite tries to do this after the third Kingsman of Zoisite pressures him to doing something, since by this point the Dark Kingdom has found out that individual energy gathering could be set aside if they find the silver crystal, which Sailor Moon has. Nephrite incorrectly guesses the silver crystal is inside of Naru. Feeling no need to take Naru's energy since the silver crystal isn't hers, he tries to leave the room without waking her up, but she does and questions why he is there. Nephrite finally decides to come clean and tells her that he is Mr. Sanjuin, and after seeing other humans, the Sailor Scouts, and Naru herself, he can't help but shake the unfamiliar feeling inside of him. He also asks Naru to stop trying to idolize him since he's from the Dark Kingdom. Dangerous people. Despite the warning, Naru still wants to trust him. Zoisite, seeing Naru cause suppressed emotions from within Nephrite, decides to intervene before she can potentially make Nephrite doubt his mission. Zoisite also does this so he can get the dark gem Nephrite used to detect where the silver crystal is. Zoisite takes Naru hostage, demanding the dark gem for her life. And at first, Nephrite hesitates, knowing this is all a scheme. But this is actually where the series kind of started hitting me emotionally. Nephrite knows, again, this is all a scheme, since no matter which decision he makes, he is just screwed. He can give up the Dark Gem and save Naru, but Zoisite would just report Nephrite prioritizing a human's life over the mission, and Nephrite would most likely be punished. However, the suppressed emotions inside him have a hidden desire to save Naru after seeing her interactions with her friends, causing him to doubt the way the Dark Kingdom handles things. Nephrite gives in and decides to save Naru. He manages to hold off Zoisite's 3 Yomas, keeping her hostage, and gets enough time to get her to safety. Naru, of course, starts to fall for Mr. Sanjuin, aka Nephrite, even though he told her he is dangerous. And this does lead to a kind of really bittersweet scene of her helping Nephrite's wound by tying a cloth around it, and even offering to get some chocolate ice cream with him later on. Again, a cute little thing, but we know it's not going to be that easy. The Sailor Guardians appear on the scene, but Naru stands up for Nephrite. However, in the most darkest of ways in this series, Nephrite is pierced by Zoisite's 3 plant Yoma's vine spears and dies, with Naru crying, feeling like she could have saved Nephrite and convinced him to live a new life. And I genuinely shed tears during this scene. I mean, I found Nephrite's Grey Zone redemption arc actually really endearing and a lot more emotional than other moments in the series. And again, maybe it was because Nephrite's death was a lot more brutal, or because I really liked Nephrite as a character, but I found this death really, really meaningful. And again, given the fact that other villains' Grey Zone, arcs didn't make me get as emotional, the fact that this made me shed a few tears definitely rung a good note with me. And yeah, okay, I will admit, it's weird with the implications of Naru being romantic with Nephrite given the age gap, but I view it more as her wanting to help fill the void in his heart, since Beryl suppressed the four Kingsmen's emotions. Yeah, it did lean towards a romantic gig at times, however, Naru, in my eyes, did it more to make him feel like he could become human, and she'd help him get to that point. The sad news is, Nephrite is dead, and Naru has to find it in her heart to forgive the feeling, even though she simply couldn't save him. I actually love Nephrite, and he's in my top 5 elites in the entire series. The hand Zoisite given was also purely evil genius, since there was no way Nephrite could live, at least not save them. He could have handed over the Dark Gem, but Zoisite would tattle and get him out of the Dark Kingdom. And he could have tried to save Naru, but the Sailor Scouts would doubt him, and Zoisite using his Yumas took advantage of that. Now let's cover Zoisite. Now for Zoisite. During the end of the Nephrite bit of the series, the reveal of the Silver Crystal's importance to the Dark Kingdom has them decide to focus on that rather than gathering individual energy. Zoisite managed to scoop the bounty of the Dark Gem from Nephrite, uses it to find the Silver Crystal, which has been split into several other color rainbow crystals when forged together, make this Silver Crystal. These crystals aren't hidden in plain sight either. They reside within special humans, were originally the 7 strongest Yomas, that after Serenity, the Moon Queen, died, were reborn as humans with their Yoma origins suppressed. Zoisite manages to unleash their Yoma forms to extract the gems, but Sailor Moon manages to purify them with her new attack, and the crystals thereon are split by the heroes and villains. Now for a bit of a controversy. Zoisite is male. He was written as a male, portrayed as a male, and in the Viz dub, he was made male. But since he had a romantic relationship with the last Kingsman, Kunzite, the DIC dub made him a woman because children would likely be confused over the gay dynamic. I don't know if it was about confusion or because they didn't want kids to think that way, but whatever. And I understand why, since, Zoisite tries to look feminine and all, but he just works so much better as a male, people. I mean, I massively prefer him that way, since really, that's what makes him stand out more. The fact that he's a male that's gay, his attacks are all really cool, and he's the first to really summon any male Yoma demons. Yeah, it takes until Zoisite to make a male basic monster of the week, and that's pretty stupid. And I understand why people might think, his femboyish attitude is weird, but I respect the fact that the anime is willing to represent LGBTQ+ relationships, so that's a plus. And honestly, in a weird way, Zoisite was probably the most successful. Despite being weaker than Jadeite in some ways and getting punished by Beryl, he got all the crystals in the end, even if the scouts swiped him at the last second. He nearly killed Tuxedo Mask, and would have won if Usagi didn't revert to her form as Serenity. And like I said, Zoisite was also the first to use a male Yoma. And his death is good, but not quite as good as Nephrite's. Though I do find his relationship with Kunzite a lot more believable than Nephrite's and Naru. And now for our last elite, Kunzite. He's obviously the most powerful, looks the most unique with his lighter colored hair, cape, as well as having the most creative kill. I like how Zoisite dies, and he still sticks by Queen Beryl's side and loyally follows her orders, despite the fact that Beryl killed his lover. I kinda wish we got more moments with him and Zoisite beforehand, though. I liked how they were introduced alongside Nephrite, and we could see Zoisite more served Kunzite than Beryl in working with the Dark Kingdom, but regardless. Anyways, I also like how they held hands, which is direct but not too kinky for fan service. The fight where they both teamed up before Sailor Venus appeared was good, but most of Kunzite's best moments regarding Zoisite come up after he dies, and it's more about his struggle trying to accept the fact that the Guardians defeated Zoisite and how he wants to take revenge. And his kill is really creative, how they use his own weapon against him. Though the death was swifter than I liked, and I think even Jadeite's death was better since, yes, the fight and kill was creative, but the death was so rushed. I mean, raising your arm in the air and pleading, "Zoisite, see me on the other side!" just doesn't quite cut it for the last elite's death. Really, a big letdown for the final elite's death. I mean, seriously, why not have Kunzite lay there and after the Sailor Scouts leave, he goes on a monologue to himself about zoicide or something. I mean, that would have been good, but oh well. He is better than Jadeite though, but Jadeite had a much better death, and that's saying something. Now it's time for the two big bads, Queen Beryl and Metallica. The four Kingsmen of Heaven were really good elites, and you hoped their boss would be good too, right? Well, sort of. Beryl works as the first arc villain, but the Dark Queen gig has been done to death in other stories, and even then there are other better Dark Queens in Sailor Moon. She's iconic for being the first when she fuses with Metallica, and, given all of her, Dark Queen. I mean, she's widely remembered because she's the first villain, but is she the best Dark Queen in Sailor Moon? No way! Though, her iconic final fight where she fuses with Metallica is pretty memorable. Beryl's last fight was good, but that's all I can give it. Okay, don't go crazy, people. No need to, flail, because I know how iconic of a final fight it was. It's not the worst fight. It's really good. It's a lot better than a lot of the Monster of the Week fights. But come on, people. Is this really the best fight in the entire series? Yeah, it's certainly better than the other Monster of the Week fights, but it's like, jeez, people. It's such an overrated final fight. I mean, before the Scouts even get to Beryl, who has Tuxedo Mask brainwashed into thinking he's Endymion, the Sailor Scouts fight the DD Girls, who are essentially the Yuma counterparts to the Senshi. This is great, they're using the gang-up strategy I mentioned earlier. And it was a really good fight, as the DD Girls managed to kill the other Sailor Scouts, forcing Sailor Moon to fight the controlled Tuxedo Mask, thinking he's Endymion, and Beryl alone. The first phase with the DD Girls is actually the best part. Each of the Sailor Scouts fight the DD Girls, with each of them counteracting one another, and again, the interesting strategy of using them to gang up is good. And we see each of the respective Sailor Scouts fight their DD Girl counterpart, get weakened, and ultimately die one by one, killing off the DD Girl with them. So Sailor Moon can proceed to fight Beryl and Endymion alone. But I will admit my main problem comes with the second phase. The first phase was good, definitely the most tense, and obviously the most desperate the Sailor Scouts have been in this season. In the series, nah, not quite, but it is definitely desperate, and the fact that she showed the bodies is actually pretty brutal. Again, this first phase is good. It's in the top 10 fights of Sailor Moon, but is it number 1? No, I don't even say number 3, because it's just really overrated. But again, the DD Girls fight is good, really violent, really dark, and it works as a climax. But the second phase is where things take a significant leap downwards, where Usagi fights the brainwashed Tuxedo Mask, thinking he's Endymion. Okay, it's obvious she snaps him out of it by showing him the pendant that he had dropped, and, it does the whole true love cliche, but it works, and I will admit the music box remix of the main theme, it did kind of strike a good little note to me, and made it more believable. And even when Sailor Moon tries to purify him, it doesn't work, so she has to kill him, and that's pretty dark. Even though she does try to snap him out of it, he dies before she can truly do so, leaving Beryl to fuse with Metallica, the evil energy source that they've been powering this whole time, and this causes the great big final fight where Sailor Moon turns into Serenity and fights Queen Beryl Metallica, or Super Beryl as some people call her. This goes into a large energy clash with Sailor Moon using the Silver Crystal Rod and fighting off Queen Metallica, and they go on this little, really brief exchange of dialogue that implies Queen Beryl had feelings for Endymion, but it's more descriptively went into in the manga, the Crystal version. Now, like I said, this final fight is good, but it's not in the top 10, and there's a pretty big reason for that. You see, once Sailor Moon clashes with Queen Metallica Beryl, we get a moving scene of the Sailor Scouts putting their arms on the rod, helping Sailor Moon hold it up, and ultimately finish off Beryl. But Sailor Moon dies too, after managing to defeat Beryl. But the Silver Crystal manages to revive all the Sailor Scouts with their memories erased, save for Luna and Artemis, who wonder if they should tell them to stay quiet or let Usagi live a normal life as she had originally wanted. Now, on paper, this is a great finale. much like the DD girls, it was great, and I'm glad the DIC dub was not retained, since the DIC dub just censored it by saying, "Oh, we'll hold them off," rather than killing them off. So I like it that the Viz dub stayed true and kept the dark. But this is not the best fight to me personally. In almost every other arc, the Sailor Scouts were put in dire situations that either cause death or near-death situations. This kind of hurts the argument that this is the best final fight, since the Scouts, yes, they actually die here, but really? I mean, I'm not trying to sound critical, guys. This is an iconic final fight. It's good, it's well animated, it stands out. The problem is, I don't think this is the best fight scene, let alone the best final fight. It's just, okay, I get it. First anime in America, iconic, first arc, blah blah blah. Sailor Scouts actually saw their bodies die, but they were put in desperate situations other times during other final battles. So I think that hurts the fact that this is one of the most gruesome final battles. Yes, seeing the bodies is gruesome, but is it really that gruesome considering they were put in desperate situations in almost every other final battle? It just doesn't really work. And furthermore, is it really that dramatic if they get revived every time? Like, a bit of bruises and battered body isn't quite enough to get my vote for the drama on this final fight. It is the best death. It is the best death, for sure. But come on, people. I can actually argue a few of these deaths could have been avoided if they didn't fall for the illusion trick at the very beginning. It's stupid, since they managed to escape from illusion and tricks before, so what's so different now? It's just... like the DD girls, I don't think is as good a fight they were. They got almost no build-up. Beryl didn't mention them, considering they were said to be the 5 strongest Yomas, apart from the 7 strongest Yomas, that Rainbow Crystals. They got no build-up and just introduced then and there, rather than having Beryl talk about the 7 strongest Yomas and include, like, it's just like so many things that like really make it like not even that great. And you want to know what else is really stupid? Is the fact that the DD girls aren't even the final fight. And, okay, I mean, I get it, but come on, people. The fact that DD girls, the mere last battalion that fight before the true fight between Queen Beryl and Sailor Moon, the fact that DD girls got closer to killing them than Beryl did, how can you call yourself a villain when your last minions are stronger than you? Like, this is like Callus in Hand of Fate 2. How, in between every phase of the fight, you'd fight individual minions of really strong enemies. And they were stronger than Callus himself. It's like, jeez. I don't understand why this fight tops nearly everyone's list. Yes, it's good. But is it the best? Not by a long shot. It's in the top 10. But it is not number 1, and it's not in the top 3. Jeez. That ran aside, I'm done with the characters now. I like them for the most part. There are holes, but again, they do what they're supposed to, and I can write off most of this for early anime. Okay, since I essentially described most of the story in the characters bit, I'm not even gonna bother talking about the episodes, since they're really formulaic anyways, even with the different themes and whatnot. The episodes just really have the same structure, save for the elite fights, whenever they introduce a new main character like the Sailor Scouts, or maybe a friend outside of school or whatever. And of course the final fights. But apart from that, the episodes are really formulaic, and I don't want to go through 56 episodes just labeling the themes. And again, I like Sailor Moon as a series. I like it. I have a guilty pleasure of it. But this really is a hard part of the series for me. I mean, it's the first season, and it sure heck feels like it. It suffers problems a first season would. But given the time it's passed, and the other options out there, it really is hard for me to recommend Sailor Moon as a series. And here's why. When it comes to Sailor Moon, and if you want to form an opinion, well, not really form an opinion, but if you want to make, like, a professional review, because I shouldn't say whether or not you have the right to form an opinion. That's not right. But what I'm getting at is, if you want to form a proper review, you kind of have to watch the whole series, and that includes this first season. And That's the problem, is this is a really rocky first season. Again, it's the first season. It's gonna have the most flaws. But it's a really hard thing to slog considering the first season is the longest season. And again, it has the most flaws. And I want to say now, I like 3 out of the 5 seasons. So by that logic, at the very least, I like 6 out of 10 for the whole series. But this first arc is really flawed. It has its charm. You know, the 4 elites, the 4 Kingsmen, are some of my favorite elites to this date. And it's not going to be perfect or overly fantastic, but I think people overrate this arc a lot because it was the first, because it was the original. I don't blame you for feeling nostalgic. I really don't. And again, that final fight is iconic. But I can't say this is the best arc because nostalgia alone does not always equal good. I mean, I did this retrospective out of nostalgia, so I can relate. I understand wanting to overrate something or hype it because of nostalgia, but it's a really hard ride to give Arc 1 of Sailor Moon. You kind of just gotta sit through it and get to the good stuff. There are still good moments in Season 1, but it's just, you gotta be willing to slog through it. I mean, my brother kind of made a mistake with Hunter x Hunter. My brother watched the first 5 episodes of Hunter x Hunter before just saying he was really bored of it and he didn't care, and my brother got hammered and shunned by his friends. So he didn't watch it, even as good as it got, only because the first 5 episodes of Hunter x Hunter are really slow. And I don't blame him, the first episodes of Hunter x Hunter are really slow, but it gets good later on. But my brother, since he formed a hasty opinion only on those first 5 episodes, people kind of shunned him for it. And you know, I have this with My Hero Academia. I watched Season 1, I didn't really like it. People shunned me for my opinions, and I refused to go any further until I recently started going out again. I'm midway through Season 2-ish right now, so I am giving it a fair chance, but people ragging on me nearly made me drop the series, which I shouldn't have to do. I shouldn't feel worried about people blaming me for my opinion, saying I think Deku, canonically speaking, is straight. Now, okay, you're allowed to ship him in the fanbase. I get that. That's the fanbase, but you can't send death threats to the author on Twitter all because you want him to make him this way. There's like 4 seasons of MHA now, and it would come out of nowhere to suddenly make Deku gay. And it's their character. You can't death threat on Twitter the author for creating the character that he made. It's a big no-no. And again, this kind of stuff makes me want to drop a series. And I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't have to feel worried since I know other people's opinions won't affect me. But because so many people would hate videos and hate comments and send death threats on Twitter, I feel the need to be worried. And I shouldn't have that. Again, you can't bash someone who complains for different opinions. It makes us as fans feel distance from the fanbase. In a weird way, it can be a form of discrimination. However, as a reviewer, I can safely say the first season of Sailor Moon is not overly fantastic. It suffers from problems of being a first arc, it is a first arc, and it sure as hell feels one. Now, there's only so much I can defend with the it's the first arc. It's early, it hadn't had time to develop these things in America. I can do that for some stuff, but there's way too many problems for the it's early excuse to properly cover. Like I said, Sailor Moon Classic had plenty of good moments, but way too many episodes going off track or being cliche make it harder to appreciate the good moments in this long 56 episode grind. It does get better by the end of the season, but the initial bits are way too slow. And again, other animes that have been presented in a similar structure have done this better, and it's a good start. But Sailor Moon Classic is really hard to go back to. And as big of an innovator it is, it's really overrated. The other arcs did it better, given the fact they had prior experience of other arcs to work with. And of course they're going to be better. They tried to improve. Now, okay, not all of them, I'd argue, are better in some areas, but conceptually and overall, I think the other arcs are better. And yes, I know it's a really good claim. Sailor Moon Classic Season 1 is actually my least favorite season. And I'm saying that as someone who's watched Sailor Moon Super S, which the fanbase says is really weak, but I disagree. I really like Sailor Moon Super S. the first season is still good. It's just the later seasons outshine it in more ways. Anyways, this is why I'm giving Sailor Moon Classic a 5.5 overall. It's better than WATV in a lot of ways, but as messy of a story as WATV was, it did surprise me. And it's a lot easier to slog through 22 episodes than 56. Even if it's a really inconsistent story, it surprised me. The Sailor Moon Classic didn't do as much. Now, it did a few times with, like, Nephrite's death and whatnot, but it just had a really linear approach, and it made a lot of things really easy to see coming. That's why I gave Wild Arms Twilight Venom a 5 out of 10, because I couldn't decide if I like it or not. But I do like Sailor Moon, so that's why it's above 5 out of 10 and above Wild Arms. I lean more towards liking it, just not as much as other things. Anyways, I'm Quinn866. Have a good one.